Someone once said, Teddy Pendergrass will always be one of the greatest voices of that era. And it's true, he was the soul of 1970s R&B, with a voice that made women cry without knowing why.
Appreciate the little things I do.
Yet behind that allure was a silence that lasted nearly 3 decades. A devastating accident in 1982 left Teddy paralyzed, and the woman who sat beside him that night never appeared again. Before he passed away. The artist whispered, "I never had the chance to tell my story. So what secret did that tragedy force him to carry to the grave? And why would a voice that once touched millions of hearts be unable to save itself?" In today's video, we'll follow every clue to uncover the cascade of tragedies that cornered Teddy into silence. Perhaps no one is born a legend without first enduring a childhood full of scars. For Teddy Pendergrass, every light that would later shine on him came from a very deep shadow inside a small house in Philadelphia, the same place he first cried on March 26, 1950. His father, Jesse Pendergrass, served in World War II and never returned as an ordinary husband, haunted by war. Jesse sank into alcohol, and one night in November 1952, when Teddy was only 2, he threw all the family photos onto the floor and walked out without a word. Teddy's mother, Ida Geraldine, didn't cry. She simply held her son close and whispered, "He hasn't left us." That sentence was later written in white chalk on the wall above Teddy's bed, and it stayed there for many years. It wasn't just comfort, it was almost a sacred belief that Teddy had been born to replace a missing piece of the family's soul. One Sunday morning in 1953, when he was just 3 years old, Teddy suddenly stepped up to the wooden platform in church and sang, "If I Could Write a Letter to Heaven." Everyone was stunned that he sang in perfect rhythm. But what made the congregation weep wasn't his technique. It was the way his eyes didn't look forward, but gazed upward toward the ceiling, as if he were singing to someone still listening beyond the sky. From that moment on, music was no longer a childhood joy, but something far more sacred. Teddy didn't just sing with his voice, but with memory, with longing, and with a belief that his father was somewhere out there, silently listening to every word. Ida always told her son he didn't need to be like anyone else, only the best version of what he was given. She never forced Teddy to be strong in another man's way. Instead, she quietly created a world where her little boy could breathe, could sing, and could believe he was special. Teddy did well at McIntyre Elementary School, consistently ranking among the top students. But the only thing he brought home each day was his music teacher's remarks. Music wasn't just a hobby, it was something he couldn't separate from himself. He joined every choir at school, even the girls' group, just to learn how to handle pitch and harmony. In 1961, the family moved near the Uptown Theater in North Philadelphia. It wasn't just a neighborhood, it was the holy ground of R&B. Teddy would secretly climb onto the rooftop to peer through the backstage cracks of the theater, where legends like Sam Cooke, Ray Charles, and especially Jackie Wilson appeared like gods. He became obsessed with how Jackie Wilson danced, how he moved like he wasn't touching the ground, and how women in the crowd would cry just from his smile. Teddy wanted to be like that. He wanted to be someone who could make an audience's heart skip a beat with the slightest move. But there was one truth Teddy never revealed. Even though he stood on stage with confidence and fire in his eyes, he never actually knew how to dance. The rhythm in his body didn't live in his feet, it lived in his hands. He once told his best friend, "I can't dance, but let me play the drums. My body will speak through the beat." And that's exactly what happened. Teddy was a master drummer who could hear and anticipate rhythm faster than anyone else in the group. He didn't learn how to become a star like Jackie Wilson. He learned how to distract the audience, so they'd never notice he couldn't do what every other black idol could. He couldn't dance. But that didn't matter, because every time he sang, the whole room still rose to their feet, not because of the moves, but because their hearts beat in time with his. No one would have guessed that the boy who once made a congregation cry would someday be locked behind bars like a criminal. But Teddy's childhood certainly wasn't a red carpet. As a teenager, he lived in a rough part of North Philadelphia, where taking the wrong turn could mean never coming back. In 1964, at just 14, Teddy was wrongly arrested during a robbery at a corner store on Germantown Avenue. He had only been standing there, holding his drumstick case, waiting for the bus home after rehearsal at church. But when sirens wailed, a white man shouted, "That one," he ran with the others, and just like that, he was slammed to the sidewalk, cold cuffs tightening around wrists that hadn't even finished growing. Teddy spent 4 months in the city's youth study center. No one bailed him out. His mother couldn't afford a lawyer, and the only witness who could prove Teddy's innocence disappeared without a trace. During his time behind bars, Teddy never sang once. He just beat his hands on the steel bed frame like a mute drummer, as if missing a single beat would mean losing himself. One night, a guard handed Teddy a broken radio. No explanation. Teddy opened it, took apart every piece, fixed the signal, and tuned into an R&B station at 2 a.m. when the music came on. He sat up not to sing, but to whisper one sentence into the darkness. "If I can still hear music, then I'm not dead." When he was released in early 1965, Teddy never spoke about what happened inside. But his eyes had changed. Gone was the innocence of a boy longing for applause, replaced by the stare of someone who knew the world didn't need a reason to drown a black man. He started picking up small drumming gigs at bars along North Broad Street. Some nights he earned just $1 and a bottle of Coke. But Teddy didn't care. Every time he played, he'd close his eyes and imagine himself leading a band behind the main vocalist, a role he knew, sooner or later, would be his. And from deep within that injustice that was never cleared, a vow was born. If life didn't give him a stage to rise, he would keep beating rhythm with his hands until the whole world was forced to listen. Music had saved Teddy from the silent days in juvenile detention. But to turn it into a real path, he had to start from scratch. In 1966, while attending Thomas Edison High School, Teddy joined the Edison Master Singers Choir. It was the first time he sang in a group where the voice was not just about hymns, it was about technique, harmony, and the power of collective sound. It was also there that he realized he could blend in with others, yet his voice was too powerful to be hidden in a crowd. In 1968, just after turning 18, he left home and moved to Atlantic City with exactly $46 in his pocket. By day, he worked as a waiter at a beachside diner. At night, he carried his drumsticks and knocked on the doors of every recording studio and club he could find. Eventually, he landed an audition as a drummer for Little Royal, a musician searching for a band to join him on a southern tour. Teddy thought he was about to touch his dream, but reality turned out to be far more brutal. The tour only lasted 4 nights before it was canceled due to lack of funds. Worse yet, on the 3rd night in Georgia, Teddy was kicked out of his hotel room because he was not part of the organizing crew. He slept in a supply closet, hugging his drum set like it was the only thing keeping him from falling apart. When he returned to Philadelphia in early 1969, Teddy didn't speak to anyone for a whole week. His mother said that one night, she heard the sound of drums pounding from the basement, furious, relentless, as if he were trying to beat away everything that had just been stolen from him. But he didn't give up. After that stumble, Teddy joined groups like Signs of the Times and Soul Messengers, no longer clinging to the illusion of instant fame. He spent time listening, learning, adjusting every rhythm, every breath control, every mic technique to become both precise and powerful. Thanks to that persistence, he caught the attention of the Cadillacs, a seasoned vocal group looking for someone who could drum and sing harmony. Teddy was invited to join right after his first audition. And it was during a performance with the Cadillacs in a smoke-filled room in New Jersey. That fate quietly opened the biggest door of his life, because at the back of the room that night, a man named Harold Melvin was watching, and he didn't take his eyes off Teddy from the first song to the very last note. On a night at the end of 1969, while Teddy was playing drums with the Cadillacs at a small club in Camden, the dim light landed on exactly the person who needed to see him most. Harold Melvin, leader of the Blue Notes, sat silently behind the bar, one hand swirling his drink, the other never letting his eyes leave the young man with messy hair and the kind of look that made it seem like drumming was the only way he could breathe. After the show, Harold walked straight into the backstage area. He didn't say much, just placed a small slip of paper on the table with a phone number and a handwritten note. "I don't need a drummer. I need a voice." Teddy held on to that slip of paper for 3 days without calling. It wasn't until a close friend urged him, a man like Harold doesn't knock twice, that he agreed to meet. Joining Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes was the moment that changed everything. But it was no dream. From the very first day, Harold made one thing clear. The stage is not for the weak. The Blue Notes had a name, but they were still struggling to make ends meet. They performed everywhere from weddings to nightclubs, often unpaid, sometimes sharing stale bread and tap water backstage just to get through the night. Teddy started as a drummer and backup singer, but deep inside, there was always a hunger, burning a hunger not for food, but for the spotlight. He wanted to stand at the center of the stage, to hold the microphone, to be called by name instead of the guy on the drums. Once, in the middle of rehearsal, when Harold told him to stop singing so as not to overshadow the lead, Teddy stood up, threw his drumsticks on the floor, and walked out. He intended to quit the group that day, but just as he reached the door, Harold called out behind him, "If you leave now, you'll be a great drummer, but if you stay, I'll teach you how to be a legend." Teddy turned back, not because he believed Harold, but because he believed in something bigger. And just a few weeks later, he was handed the microphone during a trial performance. As soon as the first note escaped his mouth, the room went silent. The audience seemed pulled toward the stage by an invisible force. From that moment on, Teddy was no longer the drummer. He was the lead voice of Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. And he knew, whether Harold liked it or not, he would soon become the only reason the audience kept coming back. In 1972, when Teddy had just turned 22, Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes performed a pivotal show at the Apollo Club in Camden, New Jersey. The lights hadn't even dimmed after the final song when two men from Philadelphia International Records rose to their feet and clapped first. They were Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff, the most powerful duo in the R&B music industry at the time. Only a few weeks later, the group signed a contract with the label. Their single, "I Miss You," released in late 1972, quickly gained attention. But it was when "If You Don't Know Me By Now" climbed to number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 that everything changed. Fans didn't just love the group, they loved Teddy. They shouted his name before the lights even came on. They jostled for seats near the stage, just to see him sing. Meanwhile, Harold, the founder and namesake of the group, began to fade into the background of the very world he had created. By mid-1974, tensions began to rise. Harold officially renamed the group Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes and demanded that all performance contracts include this phrase, as a way of asserting total control. Backstage, he issued colder commands, held the keys to the cash box, and was often the only one who knew how much they were truly paid after a show. Teddy said nothing, but his eyes grew colder. The other members began whispering behind Harold's back. Once, when they asked about bonuses after a sold-out show, they received only a dismissive response, "I negotiated for all of you." just sing well. The breaking point came on a July night in 1975 at the Playboy Club in Los Angeles. The group had been invited to a private event, earning a fee of $5,000, a huge sum at the time, after the performance. While the crew packed up the instruments, Harold disappeared from the dressing room. An hour later, he returned in a white suit, holding a glass of liquor and a wad of cash so thick it had to be wrapped with rubber bands. When Teddy asked about the group's share, Harold laughed and threw the money on the table. No one was allowed to count it. He simply said, "If you think you deserve it, take it, but don't forget, without me, none of you would ever set foot on this stage." The room went cold with tension. One member stepped forward to take a few bills, but Harold pulled the money back, stuffed it in his pocket, and walked out as if no one behind him mattered. That night, Teddy didn't sleep. The next morning, he left the hotel before anyone else woke up. No goodbye, no explanation. But everyone knew his voice had grown too powerful to be controlled by someone else's name. Teddy's departure cracked something that would never heal. The Blue Notes fell from their peak. Members drifted away one by one. A few tried to hold on, but the audience never returned. From a man behind the drums, Teddy stepped into the spotlight. But deep down, he already understood power could lift him up. And one day, it would also be the very thing to cast him into the shadows, in ways far crueler than Harold Melvin ever did. When he walked away from Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, Teddy didn't just shed a name, he wagered his entire future on a single woman, Taz Lang. Unlike the male managers who had approached him with shady contracts, Taz was a young businesswoman, razor-sharp, coldly beautiful, and so composed that even boardrooms went silent when she entered. They met at a music event in New York in early 1976, after just 5 minutes of conversation. Taz said bluntly, "If you want to become an icon, then let me redefine what that means." A week later, she became both his girlfriend and his sole manager. Taz negotiated his first solo contract with Philadelphia International Records and founded a private company named Teddy Bear Productions. Teddy borrowed $155,000 from her to launch the project, in exchange for a lifetime royalty of 1% from his debut album. At the time, he thought it was a fair price, but after the album was greenlit, Taz asked for one more clause: she would receive 10% of all his income, including non-music-related deals. Teddy hesitated, but eventually signed. Success came faster than anyone expected, but at the same time, he began to feel trapped in a contract he no longer controlled. When he tried to renegotiate, Taz flatly refused. She didn't raise her voice or insult him. She simply looked at him and said, "You chose to walk through this door. There's no way back." A few weeks later, Taz stepped down from her role as manager before leaving. She made a midnight call to her mother, saying she had something extremely important to share, a story about someone being controlled without realizing it. Perhaps it was a warning of an approaching tragedy. On the morning of April 14, 1977, she was shot dead outside her private residence, along with Joseph Jojo Tinez, a former bodyguard who had worked for a major record label in Los Angeles. Police ruled it a botched robbery, but strangely, nothing was taken, and Jojo had a record as an FBI informant. The most shocking detail was an envelope found in Taz's purse, clearly marked for Teddy. Don't trust the second contract. Inside, it was completely empty. The case quickly disappeared from the headlines. No suspects, no clear motive. But in the music industry, whispers spread that Taz had discovered something about the underground dealings surrounding Teddy. It might have involved power distribution, sponsorships, and reputation, something that, if exposed, could drag down much bigger names. 1 week after Taz's funeral, Teddy stood on stage at Carnegie Hall for his solo debut. The spotlight lit up his handsome face, thick black hair, and crisp white tuxedo. He didn't mention the woman who had stood by his side throughout those early years. No words of gratitude, no moment of silence. But as he reached the final verse of "The Whole Town's Laughing at Me," his eyes suddenly welled with tears. Fans thought it was stage emotion. Teddy only said one sentence after the show: "I've lost the only person I trusted." There's something everyone could feel that when a man has reached the peak, has all the money, fame, and thousands of adoring fans, the thing that can bring him down often comes from a past he thought was buried forever. From 1977 to 1980, Teddy Pendergrass was the embodiment of the romantic dream so many black women had longed for. People loved him so much, they just wanted to sit as close as possible, hoping he would sing just for them. And because of that, no one believed a man like him could begin to fear the sound of applause. Teddy slowly withdrew from the media. He smiled less in interviews, turned down invitations to perform in Las Vegas, and often asked to leave TV tapings early. Then on a night in early 1981, during a music industry party held in Miami Beach, something happened that nearly caused everything inside him to collapse. In the softly lit room, amidst a circle of white chairs and gentle background music, a woman emerged from the backstage door. She wore a silver, form-fitting dress, her long curly hair cascading over her shoulders, lips painted a muted red, and her gaze fixed directly on Teddy. Conversations around her ceased. A few people recognized her, but Teddy stood frozen. It was Tanika Watson, a transgender woman. No one thought they were still in contact. Some had heard her name from the early 70s when she occasionally appeared at private music industry parties. But after an undisclosed scandal, she suddenly vanished. Many believed Teddy and she had a complicated relationship. There were also rumors that she knew too much that she shouldn't have. After that party, Teddy disappeared from the hotel for nearly a day. Upon returning, he said only one sentence to his assistant: "I just saw a part of my life I had buried." From that moment, Teddy changed completely. He canceled photo shoots, declined talk show invitations, and only sang what was necessary in the studio. Interview requests piled up unanswered on his desk. He no longer attended artist gatherings. Then, in March 1982, Teddy announced a temporary withdrawal from his performance schedule. He wanted to rest and regain balance. He declined shows in Las Vegas, canceled a perfume endorsement deal, and returned to Philadelphia to live quietly in his Chestnut Hill mansion. On the evening of March 18th, Teddy left a private dinner at the Fairmont Hotel. His companion that day was none other than Tanika Watson. She was the woman who had just stepped out of his past and was about to enter the darkest chapter of his life. Within less than 10 minutes after leaving the hotel, Teddy was no longer the Teddy the world had known. The Rolls-Royce veered off the road as if pushed by an invisible hand. As the sound of metal crushing against a tree echoed, everything before him blurred. The smell of smoke, blood, and Tanika's screams merged, then fell silent. Teddy was taken to the hospital unconscious. When he awoke after a 6-hour surgery, his legs had lost sensation. He couldn't turn over, couldn't lift his arms. At that moment, he knew nothing that once held meaning would remain intact. A few weeks after the surgery, while Teddy was still immobilized in the recovery room, a series of information began to leak. The initial technical report from an independent investigation team indicated that the Rolls-Royce's brake system was not functioning properly at the time of the collision. Initially, it was thought to be a rare technical fault, but after further inspection, engineers discovered a brake fluid line had been deliberately cut. The crash into the tree wasn't due to Teddy's reckless driving. It was the result of intentional tampering. Immediately, Rolls-Royce became the focus of criticism through his private lawyer. Teddy filed a lawsuit. The case lasted over a year, proceeding quietly, with no media allowed in the courtroom. In the end, he won, receiving a substantial settlement. But what shocked everyone more was something else. When examining two other cars, Teddy owned a Mercedes and a Lincoln. Experts found that the brake systems in both vehicles showed signs of being loosened. No accidents had occurred before, simply because he hadn't had the chance to drive them. All three cars had been serviced at the same garage in the Philadelphia suburbs. The garage owner denied all allegations and claimed no involvement. Teddy didn't speak much about this matter, but his family clearly remembered one time, while sitting in his wheelchair on the porch. He softly asked, "If all three times were coincidences, am I lucky? Or is someone waiting for me to slip again?" The situation grew murkier with details concerning Teddy's driver's license. At the time of the accident, his license had been suspended due to a series of unpaid parking tickets. Yet he had received no official notification. Teddy had a long-standing conflict with a local police officer following a random stop he accused of being racially motivated. Coincidentally, that same jurisdiction handled his license. As news of the sabotaged brakes spread within the inner circles, Tenica Watson's name began to surface more frequently, but not with sympathy. Some said she wasn't passive in the incident. Some believed she was threatened. Others claimed she was paid to stay silent, but Teddy never mentioned her again, as if trying to conceal a certain truth. When Teddy first had the accident, fans wept, sent flowers, wrote letters, prayed on the radio, awaiting a miracle. But the world didn't wait long, just a few months later. Marvin Gaye released Sexual Healing and became the new icon. The press shifted focus. Magazine covers changed names. Stages that once called Teddy every night began to forget his assistant's phone number. Meanwhile, Teddy withdrew into the darkness of a room without mirrors. People said he was resilient. They said he was strong, that he would return. But no one knew there were nights he played music loudly just to drown out his own sobs. No one knew he once considered using sleeping pills to end it all, but couldn't open the bottle because his hands were too weak. And no one truly understood that the pain of immobility wasn't as crushing as realizing that all the loving gazes once directed at him were now gently turning away. No one expected that after a crash that seemed to end everything, Teddy Pendergrass could return to music. And he didn't return with grand declarations, but with the quiet patience of someone who had been pushed to the bottom. For a year after the accident, Teddy underwent hundreds of hours of rehabilitation in silence. Every movement of his body now required assistance, but his voice remained uniquely his. He practiced singing lying in bed, breathing through his chest, drawing air from his throat, adjusting pitch with sheer willpower. In 1983, he signed with Elektra Asylum and released the album Love Language, showcasing a more mature, deeper tone. The album achieved gold certification, serving as a gentle yet clear response. Teddy Pendergrass was still here. Simultaneously, his former label released 2 albums from previously unreleased recordings, This One's For You and Heaven Only Knows. But nothing was as shocking as the moment he appeared on stage at Live Aid in 1985, amidst the lights and over 99,000 spectators. Teddy sat in a wheelchair, wearing a white jacket, his face serene and eyes intense. When he sang alongside Ashford and Simpson, the world seemed to hold its breath. No one looked at his immobile legs. They only heard that voice, a living testament to the power of overcoming adversity. However, just a year later, tragedy struck again. On July 3, 1986, Teddy was driving his specially equipped van used for daily transportation. There were no traffic issues, no bad weather, but the van suddenly crashed into a telephone pole. He suffered severe internal injuries and required emergency surgery to stop the bleeding. This time, Teddy survived, but those around him began to ask questions. Technical reports confirmed the vehicle's control system malfunctioned, but Teddy's close engineer asserted the van had been thoroughly inspected just a week prior. An anonymous maintenance worker revealed that the seat control software and handbrake system had been reset for unknown reasons before the accident. Strangely, that day, Teddy carried a small box of documents, intending to meet his lawyer to discuss restructuring his original copyrights after the accident. The box was never found. Teddy said nothing about the second accident. He only smiled and told a close friend one sentence, "Maybe I'm not allowed to rest yet." And then he returned once more. In 1988, he released the album Joy, bringing his name back to the top of the R&B charts. The title track played on the radio as if no fall had ever occurred. In 1993, the album A Little More Magic emerged as a subtle message, even though some things had been taken away. The magic remained, and it resided in the voice of a man who couldn't stand but never gave up. Despite his spectacular return to the stage, Teddy Pendergrass couldn't escape the silent erosion of his body. By the late 1990s, his health began to noticeably decline. Performances became sparse, public appearances less frequent. People still remembered him, still spoke his name. But the spotlight was no longer a place where he could fully live as before. In 1991, he released his autobiography titled Truly Blessed. The book resembled a confession, a slow melody where he recounted his journey through light and darkness. He didn't try to appear noble, nor did he attempt to explain everything that once stirred public opinion. Just a man speaking honestly about his voice, the pain of being unable to comb his hair, and the feeling of having to relearn how to love himself when everything familiar had been taken by time. Then, in 2009, doctors diagnosed Teddy with colon cancer. He underwent major surgery, carrying hope as he had before. But this time, his body couldn't withstand the battle. After surgery, Teddy suffered respiratory complications, requiring continuous ventilator support, weakening day by day, and on January 13, 2010, on a cold afternoon in Pennsylvania, Teddy took his last breath in the arms of his family and dearest loved ones. He passed away at 59 quietly, like the final low note closing a love song. Teddy was laid to rest at West Laurel Hill Cemetery in Bala Cynwyd, Philadelphia, the place where he had grown up, once been mistakenly arrested, first sang in church, and where his voice once shook every wall. Though he's gone, Teddy Pendergrass's legacy lives on in every song. He was the first R&B artist to have 5 consecutive platinum-certified debut albums, a record never forgotten. From I Don't Love You Anymore to Love TKO, his hits still resonate in nostalgic programs, in remixes by later generations, and in the hearts of those who once loved him. Teddy Pendergrass departed, taking with him a voice that no one could replace and a secret that perhaps will never be revealed. From the assassination of Taz Lang to the life-altering accident, to the second crash with the missing box. All these fragments lie silently scattered throughout his life. No official explanations, no court clarifications, only hypotheses, skeptical glances, and a truth no one dares to confirm. And throughout nearly 30 years after being paralyzed, Teddy never once mentioned what he knew or suspected. Perhaps he remained silent to protect his family, perhaps to ensure his own safety, or maybe there are things that no one can speak of and still be forgiven. But regardless of where the truth lies, Teddy remains a living testament to one thing: talent can be buried but not extinguished. He was a man who couldn't walk but still made entire audiences stand with his voice. And perhaps that's why, even today, many still can't stop mentioning the name Teddy Pendergrass. What do you think really happened? Do you believe Teddy was hiding a terrible truth? Or was he simply another victim of a tragedy beyond his control? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and if you want to keep uncovering the untold stories, the hidden pain, and the unresolved mysteries behind black music legends, Make sure to subscribe so you won't miss the next episode.